predictions of the future, and the legacy we'll be leaving our families. All important things to think about, right? And so it's disappointing that a massive body of work has barely made a dent in our politicians' lives, one with far-reaching consequences, affecting our health, economy and way of life. Today I'm going to summarise the main points of the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, but more importantly, I'm going to detail what we all can do to save the world. Okay, first up, a bit of background. The IPCC was established by the United Nations Environment Programme and the World Meteorological Organization in 1988. Since 1990, they have published 5 major reports on all aspects of climate change, with more than 721 experts from 90 countries. The 6th assessment report is due in 2022 and will inform policymakers, international climate negotiators and other stakeholders about the latest knowledge on all aspects of climate change. To date, the IPCC has taken thousands of articles of scientific research and divided them amongst 3 working groups. Working Group 1 examines physical sciences. Working Group 2 looks at impacts, adaptation and vulnerability. And Working Group 3 covers mitigation of climate change. This report by Working Group 1 is more than 4,000 pages, covering the world as a whole, but importantly, by region, such as Australia. Written by 230 authors, synthesizing 14,000 scientific papers. This report has been approved by 195 governments, meaning that our Australian representatives support this work and should take it more seriously. Why? Because, and I'll warn you now, this report is scary reading. It's the stuff of nightmares and it will make you question everything and perhaps push you to an existential crisis. I'm not kidding. But we need to be brave and strong, passionate and prepared, and be across this. However, what does our top marketeer do? He changes the narrative.
Australia is part of the solution. Australia is doing its part as part of the solution, and Australia will continue to do more as part of that solution because we understand what it means for our own country. Our commitments are backed up by plans.
I would love to be able to summarize this document in just a few minutes, but that would be impossible. So here are some highlights, and please hang around to the end because as bad as the next few minutes will seem, there is hope and ways we can all address this climate emergency. Since the post-industrial revolution, CO2 levels have risen a lot. When I was born in 1972, they were about 327 parts per million, roughly 27 above historic averages over 800,000 years. Today, that number is 413. You can see the issue, right? Over 50 years, we're 37% up on historic averages, and it's going to continue to climb. Having a high CO2 has an impact. Due to our activities of making stuff, burning stuff and consuming stuff, we have warmed the atmosphere, oceans and land. Since 1910, Australia has warmed by 1.4 degrees. Globally, land and ocean temperatures are 1.09 degrees hotter between 2011 and 2020 than in pre-industrial times. Remembering that the Industrial Revolution occurred between 1760 to 1820, 1830-ish, look what happened after we started burning fossil fuels. Why do we need to care about CO2 and temperature? This graph illustrates the issue. Showing CO2 output measured in billions of tons of CO2, it starts in 2015 around 40 and quickly splits into 4 distinct paths out to 2100. 2 of them drop off immediately and fall below zero around 2055, but the others go up and maybe decline over time or just keep going. The consequence? Best case, if we were to immediately decrease carbon emissions today, will stay at roughly 1.3 to 1.7 degrees above 1850 temperatures. With these guys approving gas power plants, fracking and more fossil fuel use by keeping cars on our roads, we won't be able to, will we? No, instead things could get hot very hot indeed, rising to 4.2 to 6.6 degrees. A sustained rise of just 2 degrees Celsius will mean frequent extreme heat waves, especially for those in equator zones of our globe. India and Pakistan experienced this in 2015 with more than 4,000 people dying. Australia will be affected with significant increases in the intensity of extreme heat with fewer cold extremes. The IPCC paper also predicts the intensity, frequency and duration of fire weather events to increase throughout Australia. Indeed, our fire season has already lengthened since 1950 and the number of days of extreme fire danger has increased. Sea levels will continue to rise and alarmingly, due to warming atmospheric and sea temperatures, they're rising faster than ever, now at 3.7 millimeters per year. Why? Because Arctic ice is melting faster than ever. Remembering, 2 of these models do give us hope that everything could stay like it is now. However, change takes time and money, so again, it's not going to happen tomorrow or even next year. Indeed, the IPCC says that it's virtually certain that global mean sea levels will continue to rise over the 21st century. Here is a scary graph to put that into context. Best case scenario, by the year 2300, oceans will have risen to as high as 3 meters, or in the do-nothing scenario, 7 to 9 meters. That will mean communities living near the ocean will be lost. This is Perth, Adelaide, Melbourne, Sydney. The country over will be 9 meters deep. That's twice as deep as an Olympic diving pool. So here are the main takeaways. Our world is 1.09 degrees warmer than it should be because of humans. And in the past 4 decades, the world has been the warmest than all other decades before it ever. Global CO2 levels are the highest they've ever been in more than 2 million years. Sea levels have risen and will continue to do so for the next 50 years. And ever since we kept records on Arctic ice levels, they have never been this low, ever. From an Australian perspective, this summary table on the confidence interval behind climate change is harrowing. It basically says that likelihood of these devastating events is, for the most part, without a doubt. In the last 8 years since the 5th assessment report, the solidified findings such as longer, hotter summers are a sure thing. Bushfires will be more frequent and for longer periods of time. Food supplies will be compromised. Droughts will become more common, leading to loss of livestock. Snowfall will become a distant memory, wiping out our alpine tourist industry. Sea levels will rise and coastal properties lost. Hundreds of thousands of people will be displaced. We'll see more floods and the impacts will become more widespread. Once again, this is going to seem really bad, no matter what we do today. Global warming is locked in and will continue to rise. It's heavy stuff. And for climate deniers out there, this number of 1.5 degrees and getting to net zero by 2050 is a problem, but more so for those in many countries of the world. See these hotspots? They show degrees above norm for each country. Some places that are already hot in summer, they'll reach crisis point within 20 to 30 years, like those living in equator zones, seeing temperature rises of not 1.5 degrees, but 4 degrees. This is bad. Climate refugees will become a thing. Notice how the Arctic is most affected by this, which is bad, because sea ice helps to modulate global temperatures by reflecting sun rays. Without them, oceans warm, rains increase, weather patterns change, and flooding also increases. Life for many would become inhospitable. Food and water scarcity could lead to mass extinction for millions of animals, humans included. Is this a call to arms? Is this an emergency? Yes, it is. More than 100 Australian councils have declared a climate emergency, but our federal coalition haven't. Why is that?
I won't be signing a blank cheque on behalf of Australians.
Nobody is asking our politicians to sign a blank cheque. But you know what? Do nothing now, fail to act in proper, meaningful ways, and the economic cost of failing to act on climate is a surefire way to significantly increase costs. Modelling has shown that by 2050, in Scotty's Hawaiian policy, increased floods, fires, and other catastrophic events will cost Australians nearly $2.7 trillion. It's a number that is hard to comprehend because right now our current GDP is $1.9 trillion. So $2.7 trillion is more than twice our GDP. But what if governments signal, "Hey, I think we need to do something"? Declaring a climate emergency means that people develop effective actions, allocate budgets, and citizens respond. However, what is the cost of getting us to net zero before 2050? Turns out it's $122 billion, or roughly 4.5 years of what fossil fuel companies get in terms of subsidies every year. If we decarbonise energy and transport, we've already solved the majority of our CO2 emissions. And how do we do that? We build more renewable energy systems, solar, wind, battery storage. We transform our communities through cleaner air by shifting to electric vehicles, which are filled up by sun rays and wind turbines. At the same time, we help industry and agriculture move to cleaner forms of doing things. And importantly, we do not build more gas and coal power plants. We definitely stop investing in gas projects, and we stop funding fossil fuel companies to the tune of billions of dollars to keep doing what they are doing. If we're to shift Australia from being one of the highest per capita CO2 emitters to one of the lowest, we need government to lead the way and make the rules, not the other way around, and get on board this green revolution that is occurring in so many countries other than ours. So, Scotty, what bill would you like? $122 billion or $2.7 trillion? You say that you're a good economic manager, so prove it. Whilst we wait for some to pull their heads out of the sand, we could all be doing something now. Here are a few suggestions. Get rid of gas from your home. Central heating, rip it out. Gas hot water, cooktop, be gone. Install reverse cycle air conditioners, heat pumps, induction cooktops. Building a new home or renovating? Install double glazed windows and put insulation not just into your roof, but also walls. Maximize thermal radiation collection through smart orientation of your house and appropriate window dressings. In winter, open the blinds during the day and allow the concrete to soak up free sun rays. At night, close curtains and keep things warm inside. Get used to a warmer house in summer by not cranking up your AC to 18 degrees or something crazy like that. And do the exact opposite in winter. Dress appropriately and rug up for cold conditions. Where possible, buy appliances and lights that are most economical ones that you can afford. Teach your kids, and maybe yourselves, to turn things off when they're not in use. Standby power is a big drain on your wallet and creates unnecessary emissions. Reuse and repurpose items. Buy secondhand. Keep things as long as possible. Install solar, a home battery, and use them instead of grid electricity. Don't send all that electricity you're generating out to the grid because it's going to earn bugger all money anyway. Whilst on the topic, buy green power from your electricity supplier. Invest in renewable projects. Look at where your super fund invests its money. Do they support fossil fuel industries? If so, change them now. Buy an EV. It doesn't have to be a brand new $60,000 Tesla. You can buy a second-hand Nissan Leaf for $10,000 to $15,000. Most people commute just 30 to 40 kilometers per day, so use a Nissan's limited range and save yourself a lot of money and emissions. If you travel for work, be it petrol or diesel, and dare I dream it, plane, carbon offset your trips. Consider using public transport. And next time you go to local shops, leave your car at home and walk or take a bike. If you love eating meat, buy chicken instead of steak. And when you're purchasing food, do so locally. Educate and inform others. Say nice things about those who are doing more and encourage others to follow. These are just some of the things that we can all do right now. Whilst our federal politicians fail us and tap dance around the issue, we can make an impact. Let's save the world together. Well, I do hope you've enjoyed this episode and found it not too depressing. Again, we can make change. We can do something now. We don't need to wait for government. So do what you can. Obviously, if you can do more, great. Get in the ear of your politician. Let them know you want climate action. And yeah, let's turn this world of ours around and hopefully get it all in a better place for our children and our children's children and so forth. If you have enjoyed this episode, thanks. Do appreciate it. Maybe consider subscribing whilst you're there. If you want to support this channel at the next level and get early access to news, polls and behind the scenes and content you just don't get here, consider joining me over here somewhere on Patreon, where you get all this and a lot more from as little as $2.50 per month. And please, be good and be green.